Holy Gospel according to John. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the doors were locked where the disciples were, for fear of the people, Jesus came and stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so I send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Remember Friday? Friday wasn't the day to go golfing. It rained so much. Rain came raining down upon all of God's creation. You could almost see the grass grow quietly and immediately. Every time you turn around, the grass has to be cut because it's growing because of the rain. The flowers blossom so beautifully and so quickly, right before our eyes. The daffodils wake up from their sleep so often because of rain. Yes, the birds are swimming in the puddles. Squirrels are stopping and for a drink. Children are splashing in the floods and the pools and the ponds on the street. Each of God's creation was enjoying the rain. Each was being fed and satisfied according to their own needs. Each had their own personal need, satisfied, but each need was different. Yet all were being satisfied by the one supplier, that is the rain, raining down from heaven. Yes, the earth created each individual with each individual's need, but rain satisfied all of their need. For me, rain is a good metaphor, a good example of the Holy Spirit. Some of us have a great need to have the gift of knowledge so that we could experience a deep insight to the superficial world we live in. I was talking to someone who says kids don't play outside anymore because they're all inside with their PlayStation or play games. Yes, we see the gift of knowledge to have that insight to the superficial world we believe in. Others were given the gift of wisdom from the Holy Spirit, which gave meaning to the crosses that each one of us carry. The Holy Spirit gave the gift of healing for those torn in their world or families, or fights are going on in families. How many of you are hurting at this moment because of a fight or a conflict in your family? And the grace of healing is provided for you. Some of you have received the gift of prophecy so that you can give direction to those who have lost their way. Others have received the gift of discernment that opens the door to God and God's will in their lives. As St. Paul said, there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. There's different gifts, but the same, different strokes are like, but the same folks. Different strokes, but the same folks. Yes, he compares the church to your physical body. Every part of our body has a unique function. Your eyes, your hands, your arms, your ears, your feet, everything you have has its own unique function. And one can't live without the other. And one makes up the wholeness of the other. Even though there is diversity in your human body, there is unity, because all parts working together for the good of others, and not just for their own good. What is the cause of your eyes? To see opportunities to serve others. Be able to do that. Why do you have hands? To find ways of sharing God's talents with others. Just look at your hands and say, why did God give them to me? Why do you have feet? If not to walk with those who are too weak, to love themselves, to love God, and love others. Yes, there's no part of your body that does not have a spiritual dimension. Why? Because your whole body is united under the umbrella of your soul. And who's at the center of your soul? The Holy Spirit, the source of all love. Yes, when you think, well, just as you cannot breathe without air, so the Holy Spirit is the breath of fresh air in your life, your spiritual life. Yes, He is that breath of fresh air. Now, how many do you know are suffering from COPD? Know anybody suffering from COPD because of smoking? You don't know anybody with COPD? I know a lot of people who've got COPD. Yes, what does COPD mean? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in your lungs. Chronic destructive pulmonary disease. And it's for many, many reasons. Smoking becomes one of them. There's no cure for COPD. The lungs are damaged forever. That's why I worry about teenagers. They start smoking at 10, at 12, or 13. And by the time they're 21, their lungs are damaged forever. However, some of us suffer from spiritual COPD. C, captured. O, obvious. P, pessimistic. D, depression. Yes, some of us are captured, obvious, pessimistic, depression. Humans, COPD, you're going to die from it. However, spiritual COPD can be saved from dying spiritually. How? Simply to reach out into the center of your soul and meet the presence of the Holy Spirit and have the same experience of the apostles. Here they were filled with COPD. Yes, they were filled with that captured, obvious, pessimistic depression, the feelings of hopelessness. But suddenly, the power of the Holy Spirit comes upon them with a force of a mighty wind, and where they were set on fire with zeal for the presence of God, the reign of God. And you receive those tongues of fire representing the fire of the Holy Spirit that really lit them up to the awareness of God's presence. Yes, we ask ourselves, what really happened on Pentecost at the coming of the Holy Spirit? Did all the people of different countries and different languages actually understand the presence and the power and the language of the Holy Spirit? Or is it a story to give us a more basic lesson? You know, at that time, they didn't have the UN translators. If you went into the UN and you're talking English, those in Polish, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, they all could understand in their own language because a professional translator translating the English into their own language. Well, the apostles didn't have an instant translator. But what was the language that all of them understood, even though they spoke different languages? And that was the language of love. The language of love of the Holy Spirit, who was the center and the cause of all love, that really immediately made them experience what was saying in their soul. Yes, when you think of all the graphic descriptions teach us one fundamental lesson. The power of the Holy Spirit to the apostles and to us furthers the presence of awareness of the reign of God among us. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, you become aware of the presence of God within you and among you. And that's the purpose. All of a sudden, all those people became very much aware of God's presence, the presence of the Holy Spirit. Yes, it was there to further the awareness and the presence of the reign of God, or the presence of God among us. Pentecost means 50 days after the resurrection. That is how long it took Jesus to get the point across. I hope it doesn't take, I only get 5 minutes. He had 50 days to get his point across. It was not a religious statement. St. Paul says, the point is Jesus is Lord. That is not just a religious statement, it's also a political statement. That Jesus is Lord and not the emperor. And when Jesus said, whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you retain are retained, and when he said that to the apostles, he was giving them jurisdiction for all the world. Not judgment, no, not judgment, but jurisdiction of God's presence to all the world through the preaching of the disciples. Yes, we use that, whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you retain are retained. Tell us a little about the fact that God does forgive through the church. God does forgive through the church. The church has the jurisdiction to be able to let Christ forgive. Yes, all the story is a beautiful story talking about the jurisdiction and the presence of the reign of God, of God's presence among us. Yes, so we are able to have the Holy Spirit rain down with the water of His grace upon each one of us and have the effect of the Holy Spirit down to each unique need. You have one need, I have another need. And the beautiful part, that the water of the Holy Spirit comes down and rains down upon us right now.